How did you come to be here?
Jamestown?
Yeah.
I was born in a suburb of London, England, in a town called Bolton Woods, which was a suburb of Bradford, Yorkshire, England, about 20 miles south of London. And my father was a mechanic, a machinist, and employment was pretty tough. And we had relatives over here, so he decided to come to America. And we came, and I'll never forget it because we came on the liner Celtic, third class, no first class stuff. And then went through Ellis Island, and it was pretty brutal. Even though I was only 4 years old, I remember it vividly. And we landed in Jamestown at the corner of Cheney and 2nd Street to a relative known as Mrs. Barbara Greenwood, Bill Greenwood's aunt or grandma. And we started housekeeping, and finally we bought some used furniture. Father bought some used furniture, and we ended up living on 2nd Street, just below Weeks there, I could remember that. And we moved around quite a bit, Columbia Avenue. And finally, Father and Mother decided to build a house on Butts Avenue. And Danny Lander built it for them, and I have the invoice somewhere in my junk here, $2,075 for 2 bedrooms and a kitchen and a beautiful. It's still there. The house is still there. Beautiful, but I added quite a bit to it. And then my mother went to work in the worsted mills, and my father.
I'm going to stop a second. Can we just put a break on the chair because you're going in and out here? So on your chair, because you're walking towards me and then you're just there. Oh, perfect.
You want me to come closer to that?
Oh, that's fine. No, I can come to you. Okay, so your mother worked at the worsted mills.
Jamestown worsted mills, and she worked for years. And my father worked at art, and then I got him into art metal, and that's where my father ended up. Although one time during the Depression, my father wheeled dirt for the WPA up at Lakewood on the school campus. Yeah. And like everybody else that came to this country from the old country, you had to make it and make it right.
Right.
And we built. My father built the house, and I'll never forget. We had to put a sewer system in. There wasn't a sewer system. We had to dig a cesspool, and I'll never forget holding an electric light bulb over this hole where my father was digging night after night after night for a cesspool from the house. Now that's connected into the sewer system. But then we bought the lot next to it, and I sold the property. The lot now is 100 by 100 with the house. And I've got a one-car garage, which was a controversy because the neighbor next door at that time called my father an infamous name that I wouldn't accept. And I'm the kind of a guy that if you hit me one time, you don't hit me a second time, but I may be back to see you in the meantime. So I left it, and we moved to Florida, and I built a home in Florida, and I made a tremendous amount of friends down there. Among them, a gentleman by the name of Dr. William Hale, who took care of my wife during an immediate illness, and he is a personal friend of Jack Eckert.
Sure.
And Jack Eckert, of course, his father, this goes way back to when I was selling for art metal locally here, but I sold a lot of metal shelving, special depth metal shelving, at the drugstore that was on 2nd Street. It's gone now. And Mr. Eckert, as a father, brought Jack over here when he was about 17 years old to see this installation. And Jack doesn't remember it, but he said, having it researched. Jack right now, he had a little stroke the other day.
Yeah.
But he's all right.
Good. How did you end up knowing the Jackson family?
Neighbors. Yeah. Over here on Fairmount Avenue is Bob and Mary and the 2 children, Bill and Mary. And then down right here, there's another house, and here's Butts Avenue.
Right.
And the John Love house is here, and my father's property is here. He bought the property from John Love.
Right. And then, so you were in the neighborhood, and you're being 90, almost 99 years old. You would have been a little bit younger than Bob Jackson, but a little bit older than...
Bob Jackson was a very reserved type of gentleman, but I would see him, and then after I married, I moved into a house that our lots butted off the house I rented against Bob's yard here. And I used to accuse Bob of tying his horse. He had a horse. And the damn thing got onto my lawn and ate my grass, and nevertheless, it was his horse. But I'd say, you just tell her that damn nag where it comes over and eats the tops off of my celery and everything else. No, I had a good relationship with Bob. Nothing intimate, but we were friends. And then I had an office on the mezzanine floor of the hotel when I ran the convention bureau, and Bob was keenly interested in conventions when they came here. Mm-hmm. He would ask me, Charlie, what group is that now? And I'd tell him, well, now, where are they from? And he always had an interest in what group would come in to the hotel. And finally, of course, his right hand, if you know it, is John Wright.
Of the telephone company.
Huh?
The telephone company.
Yeah, John Wright. Well, he was a very dear friend of mine, too. And you may just take time enough when you leave to go up to the telephone building on 4th Street and go in the old door where we used to go in to pay our bill. There's a portrait of John Wright there, but they made a museum out of it, a lot of old telephones. And you may find something in there relative to our friend Jackson.
Sure.
There's pictures in there. I'd suggest you take a look at that.
I'll do that. That's good. That's good help.
Yeah, because we may have dropped some things in there and be known, but John Wright was another instrument. But he was the man behind Bob Jackson. As you know, he steered him through.
Sure.
If I was alive today and had John Wright, I'd be pretty happy. And he did a lot of things for me. I went to New York with 3 boys out of the orchestra for the Major Bowles program.
Did you really?
Yeah, and the 3 boys, well, Art Gormson picked out the 3 good ones. They're both dead now. 2 of them are dead. The other one is a young minister down in Florida. I don't know where he is. But anyhow, we rehearsed a piece that was 15 minutes long. So we drove down in the Dodge that I had, and the next morning we went to the Capitol Theater for pre-rehearsal. And the Major Bowles was there and his 2 associates. And we got up there and tootled, and he finally said, "Who's running that crowd?" And the gentleman explained to me. He said, we can't accept 15 minutes. So I had to cut it down to 4 minutes. And that night we went down in a coal hole of the hotel at Lincoln and rehearsed that thing. But we went on, and John Wright and Lynn Roberts, re-elected the night before, came down, and the kids wanted to do something for them. What do you want to eat? Steak at 12 o'clock night. Yeah. But getting back to Bob Jackson, a specific I want.
How'd you make out at the Major Bowles amateur hour?
Well, you never know. We won.
You won.
We won, yeah. But I don't know what the thing was. But we won anyhow. We were won.
What kind of guy was Major Bowles?
He was a very I've got pictures of. I don't know. A very fine man, very dignified, calm, but a damn good friend of John Wright's. And what John Wright did, he flew me down there with a take in movie and sound to show the Major, these 3 boys. Then the Major had never had that before. And he made this remark. He said, you know, this is the most unusual we've ever had. And it started something. In other words, instead of having to bring kids in from Oregon, if you could get them on movie and sound and show them down there, he'd know what he wanted. Oh, it was a very thorough program. I don't know whether I've got that picture here or not. But getting back to, I want to get one thing about Bob Jackson that really is outstanding. And then I'll go back to anything you want. Here's what happened. The second time we were going to nominate President Roosevelt. It was a pretty tough time. And I couldn't play politics in the convention bureau. I had to be very diplomatic all the way around. But 2 or 3 prominent Democrats would come in the hotel and they'd come up to my office on the mezzanine floor. Charlie, why don't you go after the postmasters convention? And I knew about it, and I said, well, I might, but ooh, boy, the competition for that baby, which was a total Democratic organization, was terrific. Rochester, Syracuse, Binghamton, Elmira, all of them. So Pete Gainey called me and he said, what do you say you go to work on that? I said, Pete, I'll do it. Well, they had bought me an old Packard, 7-passenger Packard. Frank Anderson said, these cheap Swedes, maybe if we take them for nothing and bring them back for nothing, they'll come and go. And in other words, that's his theory. But it was a good idea. Well, my wife, the great one back here of 79 years, she's now gone. And we packed up and started, and Colonel, the one head of Crescent Tool, used to give me little 4-inch crescent wrenches to pass out on really things that were tough to get. And I went down and talked to him. I said, this is a tough one. On the box it said, this is made by the Crescent Tool Company of Jamestown, New York, for you to get a better grip on your vote to vote come to Jamestown. It was a build-up. Well, then I created an idea that my competitors didn't like. I used to send a series of letters out. In other words, I found out when I went out on my first few conventions, Jamestown, we got Lake Chautauqua, and we got the furniture, They didn't touch it all. So I went ahead and I sent letters out to start with from the visiting organization. For example, let's take the first convention I brought to Jamestown was the New York State Funeral Directors. That sounded silly, but it was. And so Sam Bowers. So we sent a letter out from the Chautauqua County Funeral Directors Association inviting them to Jamestown. We'd follow that for a letter from the mayor, a letter from, these are all individual letters. The young lady, the lady that did that now lives up and she got hit in an automobile accident, will never walk again. Oh, she's a peach. Well, it's incidental, but then we'd send a letter out from the Chamber of Commerce, the Convention Bureau, and the 2 hotels. So when I went to the convention, oh yeah, Jamestown. We got letters from Jamestown. I saturated them with the word Jamestown. So from then on, it was not easy going, but I had a layout. And my competitors, like in Syracuse and Rochester, said, Charlie, that's more work than we would do to try to get one. I said, yeah, but I got to work to get it because I'm in the last stop of the cook. I brought the New York State Sheriff's Convention here, and the crowd out of the Bronx hired a special car of their own because they liquored it and fooded it and hooked it on the train that got in here about 8 o'clock at night. And I went down to Olean to meet them, just to say hello to them, because I'd met them all in the East when I went for the convention. They said, for 50 cents more, we can go to Hollywood. Yeah, but it was a beautiful convention. I lost the chef of the hotel, Max Valley, was a very close friend of mine. His knives are in the outlet. I never did find them. We dropped. We came back on the boat at 2:30 in the morning. But getting back to Bob, I want to get that off. My wife and I left here in that Packard on a Monday morning with these crescent wrenches. we had the list then of the postmasters, but not all of them, just the ones that we thought were going to be influential. Niagara Falls, Buffalo, Rochester, Syracuse. We ended up in Saranac, and we ended up in Riverhead, Long Island. And we ended up the Friday night. Yeah. I guess it was Friday night. Yeah, in Utica. And the president of the state association was the postmaster of Utica. And I went in and presented my wrench. Yeah, by golly, his wrenches are all over. Say, young fella, you've done quite a job here. I said, yeah. I said, we're hoping that you vote, your organization will vote favorably to come to Jamestown. Then he knocked me over. He said, well, I'm sorry to tell you, but I'm not going to have anything to do with it. Neither is my group. I said, you're the State Association of Postmasters. But he said, this year is the year we are nominating President Roosevelt for the second time. Well, I said, who is going to be the power? James Farley. Jim Farley was the right hand of President Roosevelt. Did you ever meet him?
Never met him, but I read about him.
Oh, boy, what a man. So, here I was in Utica. My wife was with me. She was tired out. So the Empire hadn't come in yet, so I got her on the Empire and sent her home. And somebody picked her up at Westfield, I don't know. And I started with that package from Utica to Washington, D.C. And I got in there at night about 8 o'clock, a little after. And I called Shoreham. That's where Bob Jackson lived. And Mary, his wife, answered. I said, Mary, this is Charlie Laycock. Charlie, where are you? I said, I'm in the Ambassador. She said, what are you doing in town? I said, I want to talk to Bob. She says, well, he's got laryngitis. He's laid flat with a blanket over on the Davenport, but come on out. And she always used to make a piece of cherry pie out of heaven. She always had a hunk of cherry pie for me. It was so good. So I went to the sheriff, and here's Bob. What are you on? I said, Bob, I've been all over the state, and I'm promoting this Postmasters Convention. Another crazy idea. He said, Charlie, what are you doing? Bringing a bunch of Democrats into that hellhole of Republicans? No, he said, it'll never work. I said, Bob, I'm going to give it everything I can. Now, I said, all I want to do, I want to get to Mr. Farley, the Postmaster General. He looked at me as though he was a jackass. And I felt like a jackass. Well, he said, I don't know. He said, Charlie, you do the craziest things. Well, I said, Bob, we want the business for the hotels because
This is the Hotel Jamestown.
Huh?
The Hotel Jamestown?
Yeah, both of them were owned by the Andersons. And we had discovered the improvement of the highways between Erie and Buffalo. The salesman would drive down here and get his orders and never come in our hotel. So we blew $5.75 room charge. And that same thing with Erie. So we had to counter in some way. That was a business matter. Well, he said, what are you going to do? I said, well, I'm going to stay at the Ambassador. I want to see Jim Farley. Well, he said, I don't know. He said, go ahead and go to the Farley. But he took one from Jamestown. One of the secretaries, I forget her name.
L.C. Douglas?
Huh?
L.C. Douglas?
No, another one, too. An elderly lady.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, anyhow, I went back to the Ambassador, stayed in the room. Finally, by 11 o'clock, Monday morning, the phone rang, and I picked it up. Charlie, what are you doing in town? And I said, well, I'm trying hard to get a convention. Yeah, I heard about it. Well, then she told me that Farley was in New York on Monday. Wouldn't be back in Washington until Thursday. Charlie, what are you going to do? Do you want to come back? I said, I'm going to stay right here. Because I always could do a lot of work in Washington, calling on various people for convention work. Well, finally, I met Ambrose O'Connell, his secretary, Farley's secretary. Oh, and what a guy he was. and I got in to see Farley Thursday afternoon on a platform, and I'm telling you, the most welcome I've ever had in my life, in all the big men I've had to meet, General Motors and Ford and all that I've gone through. He got off the platform, put his hand out. Well, glad to see you. Convention? What convention? And then Ambrose interjected. He said, well, General, he was after doing promotion for the postmasters convention, which is meeting in May in Jamestown, New York. Where's Jamestown? Where's Jamestown? I had to tell him it was just south of Buffalo, you know. Well, by golly, that sounds pretty good. Can you accommodate them? Oh, I said, we've got 2 big hotels, 885 rooms, and we'll be, and most welcome they'll be. Well, I don't see anything wrong with that. Do you, Ambrose? He said, I'm in favor of that. Woo! So I just quietly took it, and finally, when I got through, here's what I did. I personally invited James Farley, the Postmaster General, to come to Jamestown. And that's what Bob Jackson never would believe. But I right out came, I said, General, would you mind considering coming to Jamestown personally for this convention? Well, he said, Ambrose, mark it down, this sounds pretty good. He said, yeah. And doggone, he came.
No kidding.
He came. Well, in addition to that, Babe and I are out in the kitchen, my wife, talking to Max Valley, because that banquet was over 700, and that ballroom is limited to about 700. And you go beyond that, you got trouble. We've been talking to the chef, and we were coming from the kitchen through the dining room, and over here sits James Farley and Bob Jackson. So Bob said to me, hey, Babe, come on over. So Babe answered it. She walked over, and he said, Jim, he said, here's the brains of the convention effort. Babe, his wife, Laycock here is just the mouth, that's all. Don't pay. So Jim spoke up. He said, hey, you made a bet. No, but then Bob did bet me in Washington that he wouldn't come. And I took the bet. So he was paying off the bet. So Jim Farley remembered he talked to him about the bet. So he paid off the bet. So Jim Farley didn't drink or smoke. Another cup of coffee. Bob had another cup of coffee. Babe, what do you have? Well, she said, Bob, I had coffee with the chef out there, but just give me a small cup. So coffee. I stood there, never said a word. So finally, Jim Farley looked at me. He said, hey, Bob, what about Charlie here? He said, gosh, he's done all this work. Oh, yeah, give him a glass of milk, and that's what I got. But John Wright then, I had made him aware of it. We'd wired all that second floor, and we had a tremendous layout. And every room we had was sold, packed out. And there were beautiful people. And Mr. Farley had just gotten a new boat, and it was down around Philadelphia. So Ambrose O'Connell called me up. He said, Charlie, one more thing you got to help us with. The general's got a new boat. Well, then in the meantime, Mark Peterson gave him a full set of crescent wrenches, and he was tickled to death. And on top of that, I gave him a full set of towels out of the hotel. So he had towels and wrenches, boy. Well, then we come to the problem. He didn't want to stop, and he was a personal friend of John Blair in Warren. And they were the largest postal user in the country at that time. So Ambrose said, do you know Mr. Blair? I said, I met him. Well, the general wants to stop and see him, but do you think we can do it without getting into trouble? I said, we'll do anything without getting into trouble. He said, take a couple of Secret Service men, Charlie, and go on down there and survey the thing so we know where we're at. So he gave me 2 Secret Service men, and I outlined the route and knocked on the door. Mr. Flair answered, maid answered, whoa, Charlie, I'm glad to see you. And then I told him what I wanted to do. Oh, that's wonderful. I said, well, We don't want to have a big show about it, Mr. Blair, but just let us come in. And he said, all right. Everything was laid out beautiful. And he spent an hour with Mr. Blair. Then we left there, and there's a little side park down around Port Allegheny. And that's where we stopped. And Babe, this great wife of mine, and the chef, and 2 or 3 others, we packed 5 wash baskets full of sandwiches, of everything we could find in that kitchen. Ham, egg, everything, for them to have, so we didn't have to stop at a restaurant. And I bought 5-gallon jugs to fill them full of coffee. But remember, the Democratic National Committee was paying for all this. But it was a beautiful thing, and I went as far as Altoona, and then I turned around and came back. But I stopped and had breakfast, and so did Babe at lunch with Mr. Farley more times than one. He's dead now.
Yeah.
But that was the biggest thing that I ever had.
Bob Jackson.
Was Bob Jackson.
Did you did you know the Bill and Mary, the children?
Oh yeah, Bill's gone.
Yeah.
And Mary's gone.
Right.
They were both great kids.
Yeah.
That's why Steve Wright was with Bill during the whole time he was here that we dedicated that monument.
That's right.
So Steve knows a little something too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mine was purely this convention that he said I couldn't bring there, and I won. That was a glass of milk.
That's true.
But he was a great man,
Yeah.
and I lived in that house for quite some time, and then we moved back into my folks' house and remodeled it. But
the convention center, that covered the 2 hotels. What hotels were they? The Hotel Samuels?
Hotel Jamestown, Hotel Samuels.
Okay. And they were owned by who?
Franco Anderson.
Okay.
Then the Chamber of Commerce building was owned by him too.
Okay.
I can tell you why I left the Chamber of Commerce.
What's that?
The reason I left the Chamber of Commerce was this. When I went in there, Lucian Warren left me nothing but a clip, a paper clip, not a nickel, not a dime. The first guy come in was Bell Russell. Warren had been eating his lunch over there for 6 months and charging it to the Chamber of Commerce. So he had a bill against me for about $88. Well, I didn't have a nickel, not a dime. Grace Newgren at that time, one of the finest ladies that ever worked for me. I said, have we got any money? She said, not a nickel, not a dime. Finally, we ended up by going to Henry Schwartz, the new banker we brought in town, and he loaned me $1,000 till I got started. But what was wrong there and why I left, I've never divulged this to anybody. It was costing the Chamber of Commerce $250 a month rent, plus janitor service, plus light cost, plus any toilet paper and all that. And the chamber membership was paying it. Up here, the traffic bureau, getting a fee from the manufacturers, but participating not one dime to the Chamber of Commerce rent. Over here, the credit bureau, getting a fee for their service, but not one dime. There's the savings and loan, same thing. I went to the board on 2 different occasions and told them, I said, we can't go this way. We're going to have to get some income, and I was knocked down. Oh no, Charlie, we've done it for years, you've got to weather it out. And I couldn't weather it out. Finally, Elmer Hagelin was looking for a purchasing agent at Linda Lakeburg. And we had lunch together one noon, and that's when he said, you interviewed quite a few guys in there. Find me a good PA, will you? I said, well, yeah. And he said, it'll pay $3,900 or something like that. So we drowned along on that thing, and finally it dawned on me, hey, wait a minute. I'm not happy where I am. I can't get him to straighten it out. So Elmer said, take the job down here. Well, I did, but we had a guy by the name of Bancroft that kind of run the thing, and he wrecked it too for us eventually. But Don Anderson from the Post-Journal at that time followed me in. He didn't stay long. Dan Lincoln took it. He didn't stay long. For that reason, that it wasn't balanced right, and it had been so solidly done that way that they wouldn't change it. So, but what they had in mind for me, I found out, Franco Anderson was almost unconscious of the WCA. And he wanted to see me. And Paul said, Charlie, you can't stay very long in there. I said, I don't want anyone to go in. Well, what Franco had in mind was giving me the managership of the Samuels. But I didn't want that either. Yeah. So I left and went with Ruberoid, made a living, traveled all over the country. There's 2 appreciations here, and I made an awful lot of friends.
That's terrific.
But when I left, Jim Farley was one of my best. Oh, then we brought the president to Chautauqua. You remember that? Mm-hmm. Oh, what a number that was. Remember the flower we put around that car?
Yep.
Jim had me running around, and my father, God bless him, when he left after he spoke, we had one engine ahead over for the first 20 miles. Then his engine and his private car followed. Well, in every one of the culverts for the first 30 miles, we had somebody in the culvert. And Father and I got one about 14 miles towards Sherman up in there. We stayed there for 2.5 hours. First engine went over, then came hit, and we went home. But
now, why were you in the culverts?
huh?
What was the reason for that?
Well, somebody could have gotten to one of those culverts and stuck a stud of dynamite and blown up a train.
Oh, I see.
They,
This is President Roosevelt, right?
we had to cover every. That was well, the president was in that coach in this train. He came up on his own train, you know.
From 1936 or something like that, wasn't
it? Yeah.
Did you listen to the speech?
You bet your life I did.
Yeah. What'd you think of it?
Very good. I don't know what I am. I'll vote anyway. But I did admire that gentleman.
Was there a big crowd that day?
Oh, was there? That amphitheater was packed. John Wright took the whole second floor of the hotel and put private lines in. Every room was taken up with some newspaper. Oh, it was a big affair. Oh, you bet.
That's when he spoke I Hate War, right? Was that the I Hate War speech, right?
That's right. No, Bob Jackson built our town in his way. He wasn't outstanding. Bob wasn't a flash man. He was a quiet, but he was working. If you wanted something done in Washington, don't go over his head. Stay alongside him, and you'll get it. So many people went down there and go, oh, well, I'm a friend of Bob Jackson. No good. But if you went down there and worked like a gentleman would in business, Bob would help you.
Well, that's terrific.
And he helped me a lot.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. I brought some pretty tough people to this town. Remember, I brought the House of Delegates, the teachers, and the area. I'd worked my tail off. I'd been to New York and worked with the New York Central to put 10 or 12 special coaches on the end of the Empire that left at 9 o'clock. I went to Chicago and worked with the Erie, that they would take the switch over at Buffalo and bring the train over through Cherry Creek and into Jamestown and be here by 6:15.
Wow. That's unbelievable.
Wonderful. Well, everything was going right.
Well, you said
But then the division manager, or one of them in Buffalo, he said, "Are you Charlie Laycock?" I said, "Yes." "You having something to do with this train?" I said, "I sure am. I'm waiting for it." He said, "Well, it's stuck on Gowanda Hill, and we go up and bring it back into Gowanda, put a bigger locomotive on, and we aren't going to get into Jamestown." And they got here at 9:30. And I had a smorgasbord that would choke a horse in the gymnasium of the high school. But I didn't take yes for an answer on that one. After the convention had left me, and they accepted it in goodwill. I gave them a little pig called Tenure, and that created, and well, it was just a big thing. But after they went, I went to Chicago, and I got 450 books out of the Erie to give to the teachers for the food.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the farewell to the streetcar. Do you remember Jerry Campbell?
Heard the name.
Well, Jerry was a damn good friend of mine. I chaired the farewell of the streetcars. The one I farewelled was Faulkner. The one he farewelled was Lakewood. Lakewood, they're all fine people. The streetcar went up and came back. Mine was taken apart in Faulkner. They took the trolley down, took the cord off, got my motorman drunk, and I had to tow it back Sunday morning with a tow truck. Yeah, but...
Did you ever get involved in the baseball? The old professional baseball?
No, I never got interested in baseball. Yeah, what's the name, Derek? Who was the boy that's running that baseball?
Oh, well, currently it's Welland's own, but they also have a guy named Lanetta.
Yeah, but the local boy that's had an awful interest in that ballpark. He's with the bank now. Oh, sure you know him.
Saff?
Huh?
Was Saff?
No, he's with the Jamestown Savings Bank.
Oh, Dietrich.
Dietrich.
Oh, of course, sure.
There's a boy. He's done a lot for our village.
Sure.
I respect him highly.
He sure has. In fact, I'm going to see him right now. I'll tell him you said so.
No, he's a commendable man.
Yeah.
And what I like about him is he's not forceful.
Yeah.
He's not shooting his mouth off. He does something, and that's good.
Yeah.
A lot of people in this town that I know and you know, if they do anything, they want front page journal.
Sure.
And it ain't worth a damn.
Sure.
Do it, and then brag about it afterwards.
Right.
And now, nobody knows that Art Metal brought a carload of flour here, and Charlie Laycock at night delivered that flour. Nobody knows that Art Metal brought a carload of linoleum for their employees, and nobody knows that Charlie Laycock delivered that with a little Ford truck that they had. But I'm pleased to have done what I have.
Oh, I can see that.
I'll be 99 next, but I'll be gone maybe before that time. But I've tried to do everything I can. I met Bob Jackson when he was trying the melon deal in Pittsburgh.
Oh, were you?
Mm-hmm. He was walking down, and Babe and I and one of her friends, and I think we went to lunch together that day. Yeah, yeah, we did.
What did you say about the case?
The melon case. Bob Jackson, you could trust to the end of the earth. He would never discuss a client. He would never discuss a client.
Yeah.